at the most. Joy and prosper. Please do forgive me for the delay. For some reason, it took quite a bit for me to get into the chat room today. For some reason, the YouTube loaded slower than normal. I ended up having, but I am indeed honored and grateful by each one of you for being present. Raki Braxton, thank you so much for being present. Queen Bonita Henderson, I adore you. All is true and indeed a blessing. K. Amina Oboru Aboye Aboshishe Ashe, thank you so much for being present. Jade Jackson, Divine All Blessing, present, consistent, live here on Blog Talk Radio. All is truly and indeed a blessing. I struggled with what I was going to talk about today because there's so many things happening, both in the world of voodoo, if you will, but also in terms of pop culture. One of the first things I want to briefly mention was that arrest of Chris Brown in Paris. You know, I don't want to argue what happened between Chris Brown and Rihanna and what happened in the past, but it's hard to get past the idea, the notion that a Black man is really not safe in the world with the police. Establish our innocence, reestablish our identity, stand again and again for who we are and what we choose to represent. If you happened in the past, then we also have to give the brother a chance to evolve, to demonstrate that he has indeed evolved. If he's not repeating the behavior, if there's not a doc argue, you know, the Black man is in opposition with the justice system. In R. Kelly's case, because there's too much evidence of him doing the wrong thing, evolve as an individual. He's absolutely not acting out, performing in some of his past behavior. Then we have to defend him, even in social media, for him. Once word of this arrest came out in the public, somewhere she admitted that it didn't happen. And of course, he was cleared and released. But how we are often represented in the media. I also want to revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes, where indeed all is truly a book. But spiritual power lies in its efficacy, its ability to get results right now, here in this present, the foundation of revolution, freedom, evolution of not only ourselves as individuals, because many look at spirituality as sort of this personal, isolated path and walk, but don't connect our outward, energetic, projective output as it relates to society as a whole. When we say society, we're talking about ourselves. When we say the village, we're talking about ourselves. When we say because I don't participate, because, then we have to hold ourselves accountable for that action or lack of action then showing up again in society. You voted for the man. We're complaining now, but you voted for this orange-haired guy. You voted for him. And if you did not vote for him, then you still influenced his getting to the position where he is today. You did not take a more aggressive step in influencing your peers. I remember shortly after that election wondering who were my neighbors, who were my friends, and who did they really vote for? How did this happen that this man ended up in this position? Who actually made that happen? So we've got to look at our outward energetic output, not just on our children, not just on our spouses and our mates, but we affect even those that we don't know. I'm amazed each and every day by who's watching, who's observing, and the amount of time they've been watching and observing. I have new clients, absolutely, people who come anew, who just discovered me yesterday, a week ago, but many of you have been with me long term. Many of you were here after Hurricane Katrina. When I first showed up online, it was because of Hurricane Katrina that I realized that there was a global interest in voodoo, particularly the voodoo that's happening here in New Orleans. And that's how I got to where I am today, this place that I'm existing in today. So we've got to think about this idea that we're calling ourselves conscious, that we're calling ourselves spiritual, that we're claiming voodoo and Orisha and Obia and all these ATR traditional African-based religious systems. And we have to commit in here. I talked about this, I believe 2 days ago, up here, and then from what's coming out of our mouths in terms of really demonstrating what we believe, what we stand upon. It's okay to not support religion. It's okay to not support, the organized structures that have held us in bondage. Voodoo is about liberation. Voodoo is about freedom. Freedom from personal challenges, but also freedom from challenges that affect us collectively, that affect us as a community. I'm often impressed, amazed, shocked, and in some cases appalled by some of the requests I get in terms of how it projects to me sort of the idea of how that person views what voodoo is, how voodoo works, and what it can do for them. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here providing this free platform to you to talk about real voodoo, but to also talk about what real voodoo is not, so that we are educated journeymen along our path. I'm not entirely comfortable with consumer. I'm not selling a product. I'm offering a service. I'm providing an environment, a sacred space for consciousness change, social change, personal change, and healing to take place. I'm grateful for the support. You guys are wonderful in terms of being consistent with your support. And so I remain consistent with my support because my energy feeds upon your energy feeds upon mine. Ashe is an energy exchange. It's an exchange. It's not personal. I don't own Ashe. I don't control Ashe. I don't control the voodoo, if you will. We share it. We confer it upon one another. We confer it upon the shrine. We confer it into the ritual, into the ceremony. But no man or woman owns this energy. And in order to keep it, you have to give it away. In order to keep it, you have to give it away. I am always appreciative by those who show up here at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time, in the middle of your day to be present here with Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. If indeed you do have a question, comment, or request, do post it in the chat. Let's try this. Post it in all capital letters if you have a direct question you want me to see or respond to. Yoel Adamas, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. You're asking, speaking on the shamanic side of teachings, what's your understanding of potions and ethogens? Again, we project, interject, share Ashe, which is energy. Ashe is a Yoruba term for energy, Holy Spirit, that thing that we, again, confer upon ourselves, each other, our tools or implements. And so in the process of any implement, a potion, a gree-gree, A voodoo doll is merely an implement. It is not a power unto itself. It's not a power unto itself. The power has to be conferred upon it. In some cases, it has to be inputted into the item. I've talked in previous shows, beloved Yoel Adamus, about the prolific presence of botanicals. Particularly right now with the internet, you got individuals on Instagram purporting that they own and are operating a botanica. And really they're doing it out of their house, out of their room. You know, they might be purchasing wholesale product and then returning that unto you. But even your commercial botanicas sell supplies, just like your jewelry shop sells supplies. Your hardware store sells supplies. But how good is your hammer without the nails? How good is your hammer and nails without the wood? And then what is your plan? What are you seeking to create, to build, to create a response from, and what type of response are we seeking to produce? So in terms of a potion, I can learn to mix this together and that together and package it in a box, package it in something. A dear friend of mine who does not want to be on camera today discussed this earlier today. Everybody's selling something, something. What separates one brand of toothpaste from the other? What separates one gree bag from the other? And that is the knowledge embedded within the person who prepares that, but also the ashe embedded in the person who prepares that. So the whole notion of a witch throwing a gumbo of stuff into a pot, behind that overt symbolism, there's a science to what's being mixed, what's being prepared, what's being brought together to produce a tried and proven result. It's not, I feel good, I'm going to blow my good energy onto, you know, some sage and some parsley and put it in a bag and call it a gree. There is absolutely a documented formula. And sometimes you've got to document the formula. You try different formulas. Like any chemist, you try different formulas, what works, what doesn't work, what works and produces a result maybe that wasn't predicted. And in the case of oils, potions, you got to know what you're mixing. Some of these things can be toxic. Some of these things can be dangerous, especially if people are going to apply them, drink them, steep in a bath of that particular product. So there's a lot of knowledge that, yes, has to go into the preparation of any implement, potion, gree, ritual, ceremony, but there also has to be the presence of spirit. And spirit is not always easy to gauge in social media. You know, I can post a stagnant picture of a shrine, of an altar, of an implement, of myself, and it does not speak entirely to spirit. At some level, you got to connect with that person, place, or thing. You got to experience that person, place, or thing. Some of you. It should have a shelf life. It should have a period of expectation in terms of response and result. Often in my house in my ministry, 30 to 90 days, 30 to 90 days. I don't know why there's not any sound. I'm not sure what's going on. We had some technical difficulties here on the platform yesterday. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, Sister Love, thank you. Thank you so much. I kind of tried to warn you guys at the top of the show that we experienced some technical difficulties with the platform yesterday, and even today in getting into the platform, there was a bit of a delay. I appreciate what you all with the village, what the community just did. Everybody responded, everybody let me know what was happening, and that gave me an opportunity to figure out what's going on my end, and I appreciate that. We can absolutely come together. We can absolutely work together as people. We can absolutely duplicate Bois Cayman in a modern context, in America, in 2019, 2020. We just have to decide to do so. We just have to choose to do so. I was 2 minutes late loading the show. You all chose to wait 2 minutes patiently for me to show up. And so the idea that we can't come together, that we can't work together is a fallacy. What we need is to come together in truth, organically, honestly, and understand that COINTEL is still in effect. For you young folk, COINTEL is a documented government program whose job, whose design was to embed itself in our communities, our conscious communities, our religious communities, our political organizations, even in the case of revolution. And some of you remember me saying as early as 2005 that sometimes these most overt and aggressive Black warrior conscious presence that we see on the internet are really COINTEL. Russia might even be perpetrating and has been documented to have shown up in your Black conscious groups, pushing certain ideas with the mindset of causing confusion, causing breakdown. We saw that with Marcus Garvey. We saw that with Malcolm X. We saw that with Dr. King. So in this new context of social media, technology, Instagram platforms, Twitter platforms, Facebook platforms, we have to come together. We have to be organic. We have to be honest about who we are, what we are, where we are in our journey. We have to use that third eye to be clear about who we are communicating with, who we're operating with in terms of our traditions. And then continue to decide that we're going to support each other, support one another, and keep it moving forward. Many of you have contacted me since I started doing this show on Sunday. I'm grateful for you. I'm appreciative of you. I am here absolutely for you. And I'm fearless. I would not be doing this in this format, live on camera, offering a service that I had any fear of people coming back and saying it's not true. It's not real. In fact, I'm absolutely doing this so that you all can contact me, schedule readings with me, and maybe at some point, as honestly as you can, share with the world the authenticity of who I truly am. This is not a look. It's not a fad. It's not something I'm doing for camera. That Mardi Gras Indian suit behind me took 1.5 years to sew. This is not an easy, immediate undertaking. I mask for the voodoo. I mask because it's Egungun representation. I mask because it is our African ancestry standing up in a modern carnival platform. And so I sew the voodoo into my suit. And some of you know the song. Every year at Mardi Gras time, we sew a new suit, red, yellow, green, purple, and blue. We sell a new suit, sew a new suit, new suit. So every year we have to sew a new suit. And every year I sew the veves, I sew the voodoo into my suit. I mask to hide my human identity. I mask to hide my human identity. I mask in symbolism because historically, we as Black people, we as African descendants were masked in this society and this culture. We masked because at the time that Mardi Gras was being created and celebrated in New Orleans, Black people were not allowed to participate in Mardi Gras at all. And so masking as an indigenous person, as a Houma Indian, as a Cherokee, as an indigenous person, as a Wachita, was a political, revolutionary demonstration of voodoo in a modern time. And not only are we masked, unless you are in the culture, you don't know our identity on Mardi Gras Day. And historically, people did things on Mardi Gras Day under the guise of being masked. Payback showed up on Mardi Gras Day. But in a African voodoo context, it's about bringing down the ancestors. We mask our present human incarnation to allow the ancestors to come down and speak through us, perform through us. So it's not a easy vocation. It's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that we do because it looks good. And the idea that you can do it at this level just because it looks good, all of that is brought down the minute you put that sewing needle in your hand. Because you're going to prick your finger, blood, sweat, and tear. You're going to spend hours, 14, 16 hours a day, locking down that sequence, locking down them beads, trying to make that Mardi Gras Day time. So that is symbolic of the commitment that must be made, that's necessary to operate in spirit. You all know me, you've seen me with dreads, without dreads, with a wrap on my head, without a wrap on my head. I am voodoo. I am New Orleans voodoo. I am the authentic representation and the king and leader of New Orleans voodoo. That's my only reason for being present. I'm not here to entertain. I might be entertaining, but I'm not here to entertain. I'm not here to satisfy my flesh, my ego. I can seek that in Hollywood. I can continue to look for the bigger and better movie roles if I was seeking celebrity. Voodoo is not about celebrity. Voodoo is not about popularity. Many of you are going to lose friends representing voodoo. Many of you are going to lose family representing voodoo. So there has to be something there, concrete. It has to be something there, soul satisfying, life fulfilling, in order to commit to this vocation, this lifestyle, this path that is voodoo. Otherwise, it will continue to be appropriated. It will continue to be represented by those who can mask as voodoo, put on the cover and the look and the face of voodoo today, and then go back to their life in Babylon tomorrow. Then go back to church, the mosque, or the synagogue tomorrow. There will also be those who will appropriate this, put on the mask and the look and the idea and the notion of voodoo to sell it as a product. They got every product you can imagine that you need, but they can't tell you anything. They can't teach you anything. They can't instruct you in any way on the voodoo. We've got to become wiser. And if we're going to accept the word consumer, then be a wise consumer. I am here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I am indeed open and operating 24 hours a day, but you are required an appointment. At the scale of visits, at the scale of interaction and communication, I just need you to establish an appointment. Email me at DivinePrince at House of the Divine Prince with your questions, comments, and requests. Those that you don't present here in the group, and I'll be more than happy to help you to move forward, move beyond the box, seek empowerment, seek consistency, and by all means, get a truthful, authentic instruction in what this tradition is, what our traditions are, and continue to accept your ancestors. You're surviving on the shoulders of your ancestors. You're surviving on the power and the good wishes and the pre-planning of your ancestors. And so we always start there. We always begin and end there. Does anybody have a question for me? Type your questions for me in capital letters, in big letters, in the chat so that I can see them, and I will respond to them here online. Mickey Michelle, do I offer a membership and internship program? I absolutely do. Now, let me explain. I have one here in New Orleans on the ground. So I have people, I have someone here now who come through, study, share. They have their manifestation of the voodoo. I have my manifestation of the voodoo, and we bring that together, we move that forward. I have people who are committed to my house, who are committed to me as a teacher, as a student, godchildren. Some of you have seen the photograph, the images of an initiation ceremony that I had here in the house. That relationship would have been a year and a half in the making, leading up to that ceremony. And a great deal of that teaching, that instruction would have been virtual, email, text communications, Skype communications. So I'm able to work with people here. I'm able to work with people remotely where they are. And I am also able to obviously work with you privately and by way of email. I hope I addressed that question fully and completely. Oh, and I also have a Patreon page. So please, you can always join me in Patreon. And some of you are familiar with Patreon. Patreon is one of the newer platforms available for subscription-based teaching and instruction. I should know my Patreon address by heart, but I don't need an opportunity here to pull it up. And for my regular viewers, so see your comments and any other information that might be on my screen. So my Patreon is www.patreon, P like Paul, A, T like Tom, REON like Nancy.com/House of the Divine Prince. House of the Divine Prince at Patreon. And remember, I spell divine the correct way with 2 I's and 1 E, DIVINE, House of the Divine Prince at Patreon, patreon.com/House of the Divine Prince. I have several levels available through my Patreon. I have a $5 monthly donation at Patreon, and I believe I have a $30 donation at Patreon, $15 tier, a $20 tier, and of course, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Patreon, each level in Patreon will allow you access to a different degree of posted text and information and videos that I might post there. Now understand, $5 a month subscription, $15 a month subscription, I greatly appreciate that. I do have in-house godchildren and some who do live in other states who do that without Patreon. But I am not going to give you in the Patreon format the same thing that a godchild who comes to my website, signs up with me, commits to an instruction with me. I am obviously going to give that person the secrets, the mysteries, the absolute inner workings of this tradition. Patreon is a platform that allows us to give you a personal insight into the traditions. I am limited by what I can do on Patreon. So understand that there's value in the different levels, tiers, as they describe them in Patreon. But there's also value in building a personal, direct relationship with me by going to www.houseofthedivineprince.com. You can also, as I said earlier, send emails directly to DivinePrince@houseofthedivineprince.com. Now, I know that was wordy, that was lengthy, but I absolutely have internships. Students can work with me long-term, whether it's virtually, through Skype, through Patreon, or directly here on the ground. Kendra King is asking, how do you know you have a gift? And also, who taught me voodoo? First, you start manifesting your gifts literally at birth. Now, this is complicated because some families are very observant. Some families are already very spiritual. Some families are already knowledgeable and have the words that they can attach to the events that they're seeing and are experiencing. But the reality is, many of us, no matter how perfect your family might seem, don't have a family that's gifted, that's skilled in addressing spiritual gifts. So I almost look at it, Kendra King, as a child being born with a gift, like any kind of gift, that then has to be fed, nurtured, instructed, and elevated. So I was born with the gift of music. I was playing the piano by ear at 3, 4, 5 years old. I had my first choir at 5 years old, playing the piano, creating my own songs, putting words to them that we performed in church. Okay, so everybody is and can be born with spiritual gifts. You might be great in math. You might have a direct connection with nature and plants. That is another gift that I have, the ability to identify edible plants in nature. That was before I even got into voodoo. And I am going to answer your question about voodoo, but that was before I got into voodoo. So we are born with gifts. We're born with skills. We might be exposed to certain knowledge within our families, within our upbringing, within our experience between birth and a particular age of maturity. But then to get into voodoo, technically, it's like getting into Catholicism, becoming a priest. It's like getting into Islam and becoming a imam. You then have to learn the system. You then have to learn the language. You then have to learn the words. So as a natural born musician, playing by ear, I still had to go to school and learn how to count notes, learn the difference between 4/4 time and 8/4 time. I still had to learn what those funny notes on the paper mean and what they represent and how that then translates into playing the saxophone or playing the piano or playing the drums or singing, all of which I do at a professional level. But we can't say I'm a professional musician, I'm a professional singer, and show up at the Lincoln Center without credentials, without a resume, without a background, without a history of operating in that thing. But it's something about spirituality, particularly in this day of anti-religion, that people believe I can wake up, experience my gifts, and tomorrow I'm a practitioner. Tomorrow I'm a reader. Tomorrow I'm a healer. And there's no information in the middle, no documentation in the middle in terms of them being proficient in that craft. Now, your second question, how did I get into voodoo? Again, my family, who taught me voodoo? I'm sorry, Kendra, your question is who taught me voodoo? But I want to say my first experience with voodoo is 3, 4 years old. My great aunt, Aunt Vicky, talking about the voodoo in the family, telling stories of my family, the portion of my family that was moved out of Florida during that great Native American indigenous migration and was forced to relocate, hearing ghost stories within my family. I have a great uncle, may he rest in a room, who spent a great deal of his life blind. And it was said that he was made blind as an act of voodoo. So first, I was exposed to the voodoo. I heard talk about the voodoo, like we all do when we at Mom and Me, and Mom was on the phone or talking or gossiping with a friend or a neighbor. You're hearing it and you're taking it in. Now, who taught me voodoo began for me at 14, 50 years old. I'm a product of being a child runaway. I was forced to flee religion and violence in my household at 15, 14 really. But I was on the streets fully at 15. And it was at that point, I could have been sad, I could have been depressed, I could have been a victim, I could have been a statistic, I could have chose crack, I could have chose imprisonment, I could have chose many other things. But because the gift of spirituality, voodoo was already evident in me, I took that opportunity to seek voodoo, to seek training, to seek instruction. I often didn't have housing. I often didn't know where I was going to sleep the next day or night. But in those hours, instead of trying to figure out how to fit into society, mainstream society, and I did that. I had jobs, I had a career, I did security, and I was a telephone operator, and I was a receptionist, and I tried to still go to church on Sunday and still try to fit in to society, and that was not working for me. So at a very early age, often younger than many of you, sought spirituality. Some people don't seek it until after they have children, maybe in their 20s, maybe in their 30s, maybe in their 50s. But my life was unique in that I was then given that exposure at a very young age. And I did not start at voodoo, beloved. I was a Muslim. I was a Rastafarian. I was a believer and a practitioner of New Age sciences. I was a Buddhist for a minute. I learned and committed to other systems. I didn't just, experiment with them. I was committed to those systems while I was in that experience. But I kept growing, and the voodoo kept calling me, and I knew that there was something higher, something bigger. So then I met my first elders, godparents in Ifa, in Yoruba, in Santeria, in Lacomi, in Los Angeles, California. And I began my journey of initiating. I had no idea of being a practitioner, of being a reader, reading for other people. I had decks of tarot cards. I had tarot cards that I had over a decade before I ever understood them or tried to read for other people. I had palm nuts, sacred palm nuts that come with Ifa. I had all the implements and still have many of the implements that I had in my 20s, in my 30s. And those implements hold Ashe, hold energy from every experience, every godparent that I ever brought into my house, every leader, teacher that I ever brought into my space, every Hogan, every Mambo that ever worked with me, And there's a process of graduation, of elevation into the voodoo. So I was taught, first heard about voodoo from my family, first taught about voodoo from my family, what they knew, and then I went seeking great teachers, great leaders in Ifa, in voodoo, in Palo, in Santeria. Some of you, and I'm not being negative or critical, but some of you, and I've said this before, seek an outward display. So some people ask, how come I don't list all my godparents? Some people ask, how come I don't list all of my elders? That's a common practice in Lakomi. That's a common practice in Santeria. They expect you to be able to call your luau by name, where he is, where he's from, his godparents. That's lineage. We talked yesterday about lineage. I don't do that publicly. Now, there are people here on the ground, here in New Orleans, who know who I've worked with. They were there. I've worked with Papa Fonfon. I've worked with Marie Carmel. I've worked with Babalaos and Ian Nifas from both the United States and Africa, but also Cuba, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Panama. And that's why for some of my long-term listeners and followers, that's why I can switch in and out of Fon, Yoruba, English on a dime, because it's here, naturally in here, because I've sat at these people's feet. I've heard them speak certain languages over and over. I've seen certain ceremonies performed consistently over and over. And so your knowledge base builds up, Kendra, in any tradition that you seek to walk and operate in. So even the preacher can't preach if he don't know the Bible. And you got to read the Bible more than once to make any sense of what's going on in there. You got to study Hebrew. You got to study more indigenous languages like Amharic. You got to know what's happening. So Voodoo is very much the same, very much the same. And I do still have very much living godparents and elders, which is another common work of trickery in social media as it relates to ATR. People often come to you and say, yes, I'm representing Ifa. Yes, I'm representing Voodoo, and my godparents died. My teacher died. And so you have no connection there, again, to lineage, to history, to their experience in the tradition. And people die, people move on, people transition, but there is an honest, organic process there that happens. And in these traditions, it's often documented. Do I have another question? Please type your questions in capital letters. That'll make it easier for me to see. Mickey, Michelle, I'm grateful. I'm honored for your presence. And I absolutely appreciate each and every one of your support. Many of you have sent me support in the last 24 hours. I am grateful. I'm truly grateful. I'm still challenged, but I'm getting closer and closer to my goal. But I'm grateful for you. I didn't ask for your help. Not directly, I didn't. But Spirit stood up in you and you sent help. And I'm grateful for that. That's what family is. And really, if you want to understand an authentic experience of Ifa, Voodoo, Akan, Eve, Lakomi, these traditions, it is about family. It is about village. I shouldn't have to ask for help. I shouldn't have to beg for help. I shouldn't have to be Miss Cleo. I shouldn't have to be Creflo Dollar. I shouldn't have to come on here and spend an hour talking about how desperate we are to keep the lights on, how desperate we are to move things forward, especially in the environment of the Orisha romance. And for my new viewers who are just experiencing me for the first time, when I talk about the Orisha romance, I'm being a little bit shady, a little bit facetious. I'm not always being kind, but I'm talking about the awareness of these traditions is often proliferated by what we see the most And in social media, Yoruba is prolific in social media. So people are aware, maybe not educated of, but aware of Orisha, Oshun, Shango, Ilegua, Ochosi, Obatala, and there's a very generic, basic introduction of who these people are. And there are proud, honorable people that we recognize for bringing this awareness. Louisa Tesh in jambalaya. Many of us still consider jambalaya to be sort of a Bible of sorts as it relates to these traditions. But understand, she's giving you an introduction into. She's giving you an introduction into in terms of her book. And so in social media, it's easy to Google search, Bing search a particular topic or image, and people will then take that on. And I call that Orisha romance. So you're seeking love and financial freedom. And so you believe that that's Oshun. And so, you know, tomorrow your whole profile is set up like Oshun. But what you're missing is the inner workings of her pot. In these traditions, we have a pot, we have a tureen, we have a container, and within that are the mysteries, the secrets of these traditions. In a two-dimensional world, in an Instagram world, I can post a picture right now. I can take my camera and walk around my house, my temple, past every shrine, every altar, and all you're going to see is the outside. Just like with humanity, you see my wrap, you see my beard, you see my dress, you see my personality from a physical sense. But in a space like this, now you have access to my inner world. You have a place to come and learn me, get to know me. And we talked, I believe it was Monday, about the lack of social skills in society today. We've got all these apps and all these dating platforms and these social networking, but how social are we in social media? How social are we really? How much do we even virtually reach out? Hey, get to know a person. What's your name? Where are you from? What do you like? What are your dislikes? And when we're seeking teachers, elders in these traditions, you've got to use your relationship building skills. So you might send Big Mama, you know, cake for her birthday. You might send her a card and flowers on the Valentine's Day. You might buy her a cup of coffee. You might take her to dinner. You want to win Big Mama's favor. You want to show love. You want to show appreciation. These traditions often work the same. But then there's a level where we've got to buy supplies. We got to buy herbs that we can't grow. We've got to buy charcoal that we use to burn resin. We've got to buy the liquor because we don't manufacture our own liquor anymore. We as a people don't own land hardly anymore. Don't own farms hardly anymore. So we are forced as even authentic practitioners to now buy that stuff commercially. So once you bring that into the equation, money comes into play, cost comes into play, but then there's also value. I did a popular video here on YouTube, Cost and Value Spirituality. And it's about the person who's looking for the cheap experience. And I'm not against the cheap experience. Please visit your $5 reader. But I guarantee you, I offer you that the $5 reader is going to give you a $5 reading. And they may not have any experience, any teaching, any guidance behind that. It's like shopping at the 99-cent store versus shopping at Macy's. And you don't expect to come out of Macy's with a cheap product. You don't expect to come out of Macy's with a surface product. So spirituality has to be viewed with a sense of value. How much do you value you and your evolution and your freedom and your liberation and your change? How much are you willing to do for that? Give for that? And put aside all the mistakes that we have made individually and as a people. We've tried everything, every religion, every political platform. We've tried everything. Why not try your ancestors now? Why not try the voodoo now? Why not try what's truly organic to you right here in your DNA now? You tried Islam. You've tried Hebrew Israelites. You've tried Nuwapus. We've tried everything. Now let's try us. Let's try the voodoo. And again, I'm a result-oriented practitioner. I offer a guarantee. I'm saying it live on camera. It's in every email that I send. It's in my footprint. It's in my footprint. Guaranteed work. Because we're not dealing in foolishness. We're not dealing in magic. We're not dealing in witchcraft, which are all temporal, temporary, spell-based, make you feel good right now for a moment, like a good stiff drink, like a strong blunt of cabbage, and then you're back to reality again. And so these traditions are supposed to be lifestyles, supposed to be a part of our identity, are supposed to be a part of our ethnicity. If we remove the Middle Passage, if we remove slavery, if we remove colonization and the missionaries, and go back to a more organic world, you would have been born into your lineage. You would have been born into your family. You would have been raised in your house, raised in your village. You would know what your specialty is, what deities, what loa, what orisha you're working with. And then that will be fostered and pushed forward at a very young age. At a very young age. We here in America are challenged in that we've gone through that Middle Passage. And we're suffering this PTSD. And we have to reclaim our identity. We have to reclaim our power. We have to reclaim our God sense. We are gods. We are goddess. We are the ancestors standing up, raising up in 2019 in this now flesh body, in this moment in time space. And we have access to it. And I'm here to give you access to it, to teach you how to access it, because you have it, but you got to access it. You got to turn it on. You got to know how to operate in it. And that's why I'm here. That's my point. That's my purpose. You ask, is that Shango in the back of the chair? I'm not sure exactly what you're looking at. This Ope is a authentic voodoo stick from Osogbo, Nigeria. The deity that you are seeing is Eshu. This is a Khan. This is a Akuba doll from Ghana and the Akan ethnic tradition. And these masks represent elders or ancestors. So no, technically there's no Shango representation right behind me here, Yoel. Please, if you will, if you have questions, type them in all capital letters. That makes it much easier for me to see. Ovaldo Brown, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. Divine, I'll bless it. I'm trying to make sense of your question. You're saying I'm an empath, so you feel everything around you and within you, and it makes you uncomfortable, and the things that you feel scare you, and the things that you see make your skin crawl. Can I help you? I absolutely can help you. I can't necessarily help you in this space personally. I can speak to your experience because that's the experience of an empath. It's actually even more complicated than you've described it because an empath has to document, An empath has to keep a grimoire, has to keep a journal because you have to document. I discussed this yesterday. We all have very specific, personal, individual language in which we communicate with in the spirit realm. So my job is to help you find that, help you discover that, help you teach teach you how to work in that, how to make sense of that. And then from that journaling, you develop patterns and you learn what certain things, what certain signs, what certain feelings are representative of. An empath is also absorbing everybody else's energy. So from a small child, you've got to learn to distinguish my energy from her energy, from his energy, from the next person. And that's not always easy. I often describe a scenario where you get up in the morning, you're on your way to work, and you driving through the drive-through at your local breakfast spot. And the counter person's spirit, Jen, energy jumps off onto you. And then the next thing you know, you got an attitude and you going back to your job, your office, your family with this negative thing that didn't originate with you, but you weren't paying attention, just like the cold, just like the flu, just like picking up salmonella. If you're not ritually clean, spiritually, physically, from head to toe, you can pick up contaminants along the way. And the empath is most susceptible to that because you're feeling all kinds of things. And that's why some empaths are challenged with mental health, emotional challenges, mood swings, bits of anger, fits of crying, even depression. Some of you think that you are depressive naturally. Some of you believe you are depressed chemically, but some of you may be depressed environmentally. And Prozac, Paxil, Wellbutrin, Depakote can't fix racism, can't fix homophobia, can't fix sexism. It can't fix the bias and the imbalances that we exist in society. So then we have to seek spirit as an empath. So you got to know how to cleanse yourself as an empath. You absolutely have to be able to identify spirits as an empath. You have to be able to clarify, okay, is it me that's really feeling bad, or am I drawing that from somebody else? There are people in my family who can't get sick without me feeling it. When I was younger, my mama, my sister couldn't go on their monthly cycle without me experiencing some kind of discomfort in my body. So an empath has a lot of input and information that they have to learn as young as possible how to distinguish. Is it me? Is it the next person? And if it is the next person, am I to address it? We are not always to deal with everything that passes through us as an empath. Sometimes it's meant for us to heal it and let it go, to pray over it and let it go, or to do some kind of voodoo ritual specific to that thing and let it move on to its natural location. From a scientific perspective, Vodou Brown, energy is everlasting. Energy is internal. Good or bad, all energy was created at the beginnings of the universe, and it is here forever. So it can transfer from humanity to nature, from nature, into our body again, back out the other end, back into nature again. So energy does the same thing. So that negative energy can be stripped away, cleansed away, but it's got to be sent somewhere. People who are telling you they cleansing you, they purifying you, but they can't clarify to you where that energy is going. What happens to that energy? Where does it go? Some of you know I've talked about that on shows. So yes, what you're experiencing is absolutely the experience of an empath, just based on what you put in the chat. But in terms of helping you, I need to work with you more personally. I need you to send me an email, DivinePrince@houseofthedivineprince.com. Be prepared to commit to a plan of therapy, to a plan of addressing not only the symptoms of you being an empath, but what do I now do with this information? Why am I receiving it? What do I do with it? How do I evolve it? How do I move it forward so that it is beneficial for both me and the rest of the world? Some of that energy that you receive as an empath is toxic. It's cancerous, and you absolutely have to clarify it. What do you do or your family know about witchcraft, sanctuary, or voodoo, and can you have them work on your behalf? Okay, yeah, your questions are getting more and more personal, so you're going to have to contact me in an email, and I can move you forward from there. The next question, what is the path to initiation to voodoo? The path to initiation to voodoo, first of all, if your experience is not similar to mine, it's already in your family, it's already discussed, it's already talked about, but you're an individual now of conscious mind and you want to seek this on your own. You've got to find a mentor. People ask me every day, what's your book list? What should I be reading? And often that translates into what other books should I read along with jambalaya? Because tomorrow I'm going to be a psychic reader. That's not gaining access into the voodoo. However, people ask me, what should I read? I say, read absolutely everything, everything. Because voodoo ain't one book. Just like chemistry is not one book. Just like you don't go to a university to get a degree and do it on one book. So read everything, study everything, but by all means, you have to have a mentor. You cannot get access to the inner teachings of how voodoo work without godparents, without a mentor. It is the same in Ifa, Lakomi, Santeria, Palo. You've got to have a mentor. Someone's got to walk you through, discuss it, teach you hands-on. Just like becoming a Shriner, a Mason, a fraternity, a sorority. You can't just walk up and ask them to explain in detail their process. They might give you a general understanding. You're going to be online and you're going to have to go through a certain process, but the inner workings have to be explained to you hands-on, personally, in detail. A lot of what you see in this space, 2-, 3-dimensional space, is just that, 2- and 3-dimensionally. And I can explain on the surface, symbolically, what this means. But then there's a whole lot of deeper level stuff going on in that it would take me 12 hours here on YouTube to explain. Again, I hope I'm answering the questions. If not, type your replies here in capitals so I can see them better, so I don't have to lean in to see them. Pierre, send me an email. Send me an email. I assure you, no amount of asking in the space of social media is going to make that happen. It's still social media. This is sacred space, but social media is not quite sacred space. So you've got to send me a private request by way of email, and then we can begin the journey. Did we violate contracts with the ancestors, the Most High? Sir Ho, if there was a question that you had prior to that, I don't see it. So I'm going to respond to your question just based on what's before me. Did we violate contracts with the ancestors, the Most High, etc.? Now, first I'm going to say I'm very resistant to feed an already out there idea that somehow the Black people are cursed. Somehow, even in the Bible, there's this story of, of cursing. There's even the story of Esau and Jacob, and one received the blessing of, of man, and the other received the blessing of God. So there's always this idea that somehow we are cursed or have violated. Now, if we look at reincarnation, we've all have lived. We have all lived more than one time. And so we shuffle. And so our ancestors absolutely can be standing up now, the same ancestors from the Middle Passage, both the enslaved and the colonizers. And so some white people come back as Black people, and some Black people have come back as white people, particularly if you sold your own into slavery. So there is a level of karma there. retribution there that plays out. We are absolutely processing, bringing balance to some wrong from the past. But I just wanted to be careful that I didn't give you the idea, as some traditions teach, that somehow we are accursed and are having this experience as Black people, and that's what we're here to bring balance to. I'm so grateful for everybody who's in chat. I never thought, I really didn't, that this show was going to be this popular, that people would have this kind of interest in the show, and that people would actually participate, which is what I was not getting in Blog Talk Radio. I wasn't getting that direct participation. So I greatly appreciate that. Yoel, you're asking, am I of Arawak bloodlines? I don't believe so. Now, according to my DNA, and particularly the new upgraded, updated version in Ancestry.com, I now have at least 1% Native American, or I should say Indigenous American as opposed to Native American. The former understanding was that we were here and that somehow we, Black people are connected to Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole, Arawak. But then there's the newer understanding from the DNA perspective that Indigenous American can be from as far north in Canada as you can go to below Brazil, deep into South America. So I indeed have some indigenous bloodlines, but as far as I know, it is not specific to the Arawak. I'm looking for your questions. Please, I'm asking you to type them in all capitals. That will make it much easier to see. What does it mean to dream of Loas? Golden nuptials. What does it mean to dream of Loas? I talked earlier about the Orisha romance, and I hope you caught that. I'm not always being nice when I talk about it. It is sort of this instant access of information that we all have access to here on the social platform, whether it's here on YouTube or in a Google search. But many of us, African Americans here in America, our only true experience, connection to these traditions is through what we're learning. So I'm answering your question, dreaming about Loa. So many believe, okay, I dreamt of Oshun, so I must be Oshun, or I must have her protection. I must be operating under her guidance. And organically, that can absolutely be true. Your ancestors will speak to you. The Loa will speak to you. The guides will speak to you. But they're speaking in a coded language. It does not necessarily mean, for instance, you need to initiate. You need to marry that particular Loa, because that can only be determined in divination. It's not that I have similarities with Shango. It's not that I have similarities with Oshun. It's not that I desire the blessings of Yemaya. But in terms of really crowning a Loa or deity is done through divination. And that's why the donation fee is a little bit higher. It's a long process. It's people right here in this chat that'll tell you my complete reading is at least an hour and a half long, if not longer. So when we're looking at who's governing your head, who you should initiate with, who's operating you at a real level, because you could be a child of Lekpa and still be dreaming of other Loa. So there's a mystery being spoken. So depending on the Loa, they're representing a different aspect of the message that they're sending. So Dantora is only going to come through under certain circumstances. Like Yemaya, she's going to represent the great mothers. She's going to come to protect the children. She's going to come to correct a right or a wrong. And even their emotions in the dream state. Dantora might be laughing. She ain't happy. And she's about to hurt somebody. Oshun might be crying. She's not sad. That's often when she's in a happier state. And so these are coded things that only through initiation, trial and error, just like chemistry, practice, can you gather a deeper awareness of and understanding. So yes, Loa can speak to you in dreams. They're trying to communicate something to you. I can absolutely help you put that together. Send me an email, DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. Also, I'm very appreciative of those of you who used that donation button here in the chat on yesterday. But I'm going to ask you not to use that. If you want to support me, if you want to send an offering, please send it by way of my PayPal. PayPal me, the Divine Prince. If you're unclear about that, go to my website. I have a direct PayPal link on my website. If you can't memorize that, or you don't quite understand how to use the PayPal me application. But I don't have a problem with YouTube. I don't have a problem with Google ads. So don't ban me or mess up my show. I'm just asking you all, don't use that donation button in this platform. Send it to me directly. Less problems, less complications. I still haven't figured that out. Some people offered a donation yesterday. We still don't know quite exactly where that donation is. So please just use the PayPal. And if you can't quite get that, email me and then I'll walk you through that process. The S wonders, I'm humbled for your entire dream here. It's not even the right platform to do so. So send me an email if you want to really go into the dream and have me look at it. And I'll tell you exactly what's happening, what's going on there. But I appreciate you, beloved. Absolutely. Michelle McQuayla. Many people are challenged with not only belief in the DNA, but acceptance of it. I'm not close to that. I'm not particularly open to it either, because I think it comes down to what is your motivation for seeking the DNA result. Now, I have taken more than one test, and I strongly suggest anybody who can afford it take more than one test. The tests are not going to line up exactly because we're not looking at parentage. We're not trying to determine who the father is, who the mother is, though that will show up in your test. And for me to seek my own validation in the test, I made sure that happened. I made sure that I took the test. I paid for my mom to take the test. I paid for my baby sister. My mom has 2 kids. My father has many kids, but my mom has 2 kids. So I made sure that we took the test so that I could first identify parentage, my parental lineage, maternal lineage. And then I was looking for any matches, but also discrepancies in the test amongst these people that I knew that I was related to. And we found that to be consistent, even in the 23andMe. Now, what does get more tricky is identifying second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth cousins and on. I think people underestimate the number of ancestors that you really are working with. Just in grandparents alone, between here, going back to the continent of Africa for me, is in the hundreds of grandparents. So I think it's important to have some idea of who your family is. Michelle McQuayla, I hope I'm saying your last name right. But I don't, I'm not embracing the test, for instance, in terms of the health portion. I have not done the health portion of 23andMe. I'm not invalidating it. They may have access to some of the very same tests that you would take at your doctor's office, determine, how likely you are to get breast cancer, for instance, how likely you are to get cervical cancers, for instance. But those tests are very complicated and specific. What we are getting through Ancestry, 23andMe, is very reduced information. At the scientific level, this is really much more complex than that. Identifying your ethnic ancestry is much more complex than that. So I agree with you to some degree, in that I'm not operating in DNA based on belief, no more than I operate in voodoo based on faith or belief. That's really Christian. I am absolutely operating on voodoo, but also the DNA, Michelle, from a scientific perspective. So I am seeking to fill in the gaps, the middle passage. I talked earlier in the week about me traveling to Brazil, building a relationship with a voodoo house in Brazil, and then us traveling to Togo, Benin, West Africa, in a retracing of the middle passage from a spiritual perspective back to the source. So the DNA is just an extra product in that regard. And yes, I see you said you asking for help. I will absolutely help you. The ancestral divination, and then there's ancestral work, will help you to make sense of that. We like to say we honor our ancestors, but for many of us here in the US, who are those ancestors exactly? Especially those of us who unfortunately came through slavery and middle passage. Broken homes, many of you don't know who your daddy is or don't know anything about your daddy's family. Some of you don't know who your mama is and don't know anything about your mama family. I've had people who are adopted. In fact, I just met a very close cousin. He's a first cousin removed, which makes him my second cousin. Younger guy, all because of DNA. He was adopted. He has a white mother and a black father and has no connection to either side of his family. So the DNA can be very beneficial, very beneficial. And let me help you to address that and make sense of that before you totally give up, Michelle, on the DNA and that process. Thanks, Queen Bonita Henderson. Not only am I grateful, I'm in a bad spot. So please, I'm still getting over the breakdown with the federal government. I'm still getting over, holiday season. People's priorities change during the holidays. And so spirituality takes a back burner for some people during the holidays, and family and entertainment and tradition and gift buying replaces it. And your ministers, your healers, we pay a price for that. So I'm grateful. I'm truly, truly grateful. I hope you see it in my face. I hope you see it in my eyes. I'm truly grateful. Are there any more questions for me that I can address here in this format before we close the show? We've done a long show today. I only do shows when people are listening, when people are interacting, when people are participating. And so far, it's been every day since Sunday, every day. So I am truly and indeed here for you. All is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, my affirmation, my reverberation, my reiteration, and my reality. It is crucial. All is a blessing is crucial to the foundation of who I am, what I teach, my walk, my work, my demonstration. I share my struggle with you so that you can experience my walk. I share my struggle with you so you can see voodoo work and be validated. I share my challenges with you to validate the voodoo, not to validate me, not to validate my ego, not to fill my coffers, not to satisfy my pocket, but to validate and bring truth to the voodoo. So all is a blessing. And in the activation of, the demonstration of revolutionary hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes, I'm here to foster a revival. I'm here to show you and help you to understand that there are options. There are options. It don't have to be the church. Church might be your thing, but it don't have to be the church. It don't have to be Islam. It don't have to be Judaism. It don't have to be Nuapu. It doesn't have to be a Mormon. Go back to your roots. Go back home. Come back home to Africa was my intro music on my former Blog Talk Radio show platform. Come back home. Return home. Allow me to help you to find home. Many of us are lost in here, and we're seeking home. You might have a family. You might have a marriage. You might have the most perfect picture of what a family is. But in terms of spirit, many are broken. Many are in pain. Many are seeking validation. Many are seeking empowerment. Many are seeking change. And I'm here to make kings and queens. I'm here to birth gods and goddesses. I'm here to produce priests and priestesses, mambos and hogans who are going to operate in this, in truth, in authenticity, who are going to pass this on to their children and to their children's children and to their friends and to their neighbors. I'm not asking you to enforce this upon anybody. I'm not asking you to enforce this upon Big Mama and Big Papa. I'm asking you to walk in it, to demonstrate it, to let people know through your demonstration that this can be done in a modern time, in a modern world. This can be done, that we can regain empowerment through an indigenous practice and tradition right here and right now in this divine moment in time space. That's what this is truly all about for me. This is a virtual temple space, a virtual Elay. This is a virtual voodoo house. And I'm inviting you to come in. I'm inviting you to become practitioners of this authentically. And myself, as well as my godchildren, can step into any Elay. I don't care if it's in Cuba. I don't care if it's in West Africa. I don't care if it's in Brazil, and represent authentically. My godchildren understand Yoruba, understand Ewe, understand Akan, understand what's happening with the Sangoma, understand what's happening with the Tarot Reader, and they can operate in it authentically, and stand up in it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What religion is on your birth certificate? What religion do you put on your job application? What does your family plan to do with your body once you pass on, once you transition? This is all about who we are. This is all about being voodoo. This is all about being true to who you say you are. Hoodoo, conjure, witchcraft, paganism gives people an opportunity to say that I can do what I want to do. I ain't really got no rules. I'm going on my good feeling. I'm going on my ego. These organized systems are organized not to control, but to teach a reliable, consistent level of information to the generation so that it survives. I want this voodoo to survive, but I can't do it without you. I can't do it without your help. I'm not rich. I don't have much. Acting is my job, and I don't do that every day. Voodoo is my life. Voodoo is my vocation. I'm here 24 hours a day. Some of you know it. I was doing readings at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, New Year's Day. You were popping bottles. I was doing readings. I was doing ritual. I was doing ceremony. I was in communication with the ancestors. And I sacrificed my life so that I can empower you. I can't get on here and profess result-oriented work without giving up something in my life to ensure that that happens for you. That is my vocation. That is my raison d'etre. That is my reason for being. That is why I'm here. If there are no more questions, I certainly appreciate and love each and every one of you. Rukia Kamaria asks, what is a good way to teach children to differentiate energy? And that's a great question, especially for young children, because you don't want to scare them. You don't want to overpopulate them with a lot unhelpful, unnecessary information. But you want them to understand and learn negative and positive. Please forgive me, you all. I have to respond to this. Please forgive me. Just give me a minute. Peace and blessings. Hi, Crystal. Let me say real quickly, I'm in the middle of doing a live broadcast, but I'm willing to talk to you. So go ahead. How can I help? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I know that I have a history of complaining about location. I absolutely have already secured transportation. Okay. Thank you. Peace and blessings. Forgive me. When acting calls, when casting calls, and see, y'all saw that. I just talked that up. I said that I need acting to pay my bills. I don't use voodoo to survive. Acting. Y'all saw me live on camera talk that up. That was a casting call for a job on the West Bank. So I'm grateful for the ancestors. I'm grateful for the voodoo. I'm not here on faith. I'm not here because I believe voodoo. I'm here because voodoo has been proven to me through my experience, through the experience of those around me. I am not a right brain reader. If you understand right brain is moon energy, it's intuitive, it's feeling. Left brain is math, it's science. Left brain requires proof. Left brain requires you to prove to me who and what. Left brain requires me to validate your authenticity. And left brain requires me to ask the spirits of that in terms of the voodoo. I ask the spirits to prove that voodoo to me and to my listeners each and every day. The voodoo should be showing up in your life. And if it is showing up in your life, be honest, share it. Let us know your experience. Let us know what's happening. If I was doing the wrong thing, if I was doing the bad thing, you all would have known about it yesterday. I'm on TV, I'm on the internet. If I was doing the wrong thing, you all would have known about it yesterday. I don't have R. Kelly's track record. So I am here for you. I appreciate each and every one of you. If there are no more questions, I'll be here tomorrow at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe. Contact information is on the profile.